Hello, and welcome back to It's Not Just a Tuesday, the podcast where we're talking about work and life and the stories that connect us all. It has been an interesting week, and I was just talking to my guest today about the fact that, when you are a solopreneur, when you work for yourself, when you're anyone who has decided to kind of craft a life that is exactly what you want it to be, it also just comes with so much ebb and flow of, wow, can I do this or can't I? So I'm really excited to have with me today the amazing Sue Keels, who is the person who taught me how to find a why. Sue was finding her why long before anyone in my network had ever heard of Simon Sinek. She found him and just has blazed a trail with him in the hospitality industry. And Sue and I had the privilege of working together for several years, and I'm just so pleased that you spent some time with me today, and I'm looking forward to hearing from you. If you are a solopreneur, if you're a woman, if you are someone who just loves being able to dive into what work and life should look like for your own life, Sue is the person to listen to. I actually just yesterday, Sue doesn't know this, just yesterday someone texted me and said, "Hey, we need a keynote speaker for this event we're having. Do you think Sue Keels would do it?" And I said, "Yeah, I think she'd be great." And they were like, we just were looking for someone who is from the Detroit area and understands what it means um, to really craft themselves, but also just be an inspiration to everyone around them. And she came up, and I thought, oh, that's so cool. I'm talking to her tomorrow. How fun is that? So I'll give you more info on that after the podcast, Sue. So welcome, Sue. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Andrea. It's so great seeing you, and thank you for sharing this space with me. I've really enjoyed your podcast over the past few months. It's been inspiring, so thank you.
Yeah, awesome. So let's just dive right in. I want you to share your story and some of your journey with me and with us. I know some of your story, and I've been able to to walk in some of your story with you, which has been really cool. But one of the things that you said to me when we first met, and probably a few times over the course of the time that I've known you, is that you grew up in the school of Fort Knox, not the school of hard knocks. And it stuck with me for I don't even know how many years, because sometimes when I'm doing things and I'm like, okay, how am I going to learn this? I'm like, wait, Fort Knox, you can do this. You can get out of this. It's something that really stuck with me. So talk to us about your career journey, your life journey, and what led you to be sitting here with me today.
Sure. So I have been in the hospitality industry for over 30 years, and I literally did start from the ground floor, as I say, Fort Knox, boots on the ground. When I was in school, I started very young as a waitress and bartender, and just the bug bit me early. And I felt very lucky that I'd found an industry that I was so passionate about. And I just kept on progressing and progressing. And then fast forward, after spending a lot of time in restaurants and managing country clubs and several hotels, I ended up with a wonderful position and had three careers at a luxury hotel in the Michigan market. And I was able to get to the helm as GM, and I was one of the first female general managers in the Midwest to manage a luxury market. So I'm super proud of that, and it has just been a great blessing. And I took the hotel, as you know, you were right there with me through the pandemic,
Yeah.
and then also through an acquisition, which was kind of unexpected
Hmm.
but expected.
Right.
And I decided that I had like two roads. I could stay on the path and stick with the hotel after sale,
Uh-huh.
or just leave day of sale and figure out my next path.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I tapped
And
into
that's
my
and
why,
that's where you are now.
and that's
Yeah,
where I am
right?
now. And I
That's
tapped into my why, took a deep, big, bold, courageous step and breath, and walked away from a really wonderful career. My work there was done. I just knew I had another calling, Andrea. I felt it,
Yeah.
and I just followed
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. So what is that calling? What are you doing now?
So I took about what turned into maybe I thought a 1 month sabbatical. I ended up taking a 5 month sabbatical to really figure it
Gorgeous.
out. And, I had been in the hotel hospitality hustle all my life. So that was a little
Mhm.
surreal for me, taking that
Yeah.
sabbatical and having time to just figure things out and quiet time. But I decided that my true calling and my next step was to revive the heart of hospitality. And I do that through collaboration, through consulting and teaching, people how to be stewards of excellent service and mentoring the next generation and recruiting.
Yeah.
So I'm really passionate about this industry I love. And we lost a little bit after the pandemic. So my
Yeah.
heart is just reviving and helping people get excited about hospitality again.
Yeah. It's we did, we started working together in my lane of doing communications and PR and starting out in journalism, we met because the luxury hotel that you were at is in my community. And so
Yes.
I was, starting in journalism and doing media articles on really cool businesses in the area and different events that you were having. And so that was how Sue and I met. And it was one of those things. I always say this, when people are supposed to align in your life, then they just do. And we always said, when the time is right, we'll work together. Like
Hmm.
we knew that there were projects that we were going to get to do together. We didn't always know what they were, but they always came about. And I still feel that way. There are things where I'll send people your way or you'll send people my way. And I just think that comes from that place of being authentic. And only if we're authentic can we recognize the other people that align with us because they see who we actually are. And I love that about you and that about us. I love that we bring that to the professional world, right? Because I think that's something we miss. And so walking into the pandemic, you had spent years sharing as a leader your why with the hospitality industry, with the hotel that you worked at. And I've always been honest about before I knew I was calling it a why, right? I've always just been like, this is who I am and this is what I do and this is what I believe in. And I think that, I can align with a business and organization and help you do it too. And let's share your story. And that's really how I come to every space. And so when the pandemic hit and we had no idea what to do. I remember getting those calls from a lot of clients and being so scared because I'm the person who is writing communication. And so, you were one of those clients at the time who said, we have to put out a notice. We have to put out a memo. What will we say to our internal teams? How will we talk to guests? What are we putting on social media? What's the media going to say? And I'm this, we had our plans and we had crisis plans already. We had plans in place for how we shared things, right? Which was really helpful. But when that moment came, nothing could have prepared us for, hey, we need to close the doors of a hotel. And I remember you and I having that conversation and the trust that we had in each other, right? To say, here's what I'm thinking. What do you think? I was like, I think let's just continue to be the waymaker in this space of hospitality. Let's set the tone. If you know this is going to happen, I think you tell everyone. We don't know what's going to happen, but we got to close, right? And that was the scariest thing as a leader, right? As both you as the leader and me as saying, I think this is what we should do. And there's so much fear that comes with that. And being, looking on the other side of that, in this conversation about being a solopreneur, I get imposter syndrome every 10 minutes, right? Every few minutes I think to myself, I'm not good enough. I don't know what I'm doing. I can't believe that anyone is listening to me. And it's those moments that I have to go back to and think, wait a minute, I did this and it was right and it worked. Or I did this and it was wrong, but it was okay. We figured it out, right? And the grace for that. And I think that you lead in such a way that allows the grace for mistakes, but also the grace to say, hey, if the moment is changing and I'm not changing with the moment, let's make a pivot. And so I love that you have been able to take everything you learned from an industry and stay in that industry and say, okay, here's who I am for you now. Right. Instead of being able to give your talents to one hospitality team, now you're able to take it to whomever wants to tap into that and have you as a leader. And I love that. Talk to me a little bit about some of the process that you work on with folks. I know it's really unique to you especially in the hospitality industry, but I just think in corporate in general, um, some of the methodology, meth, meth, the word, that's so funny that word's escaping me. Some of the method behind what you do and how you walk through leadership development and that team building with a hospitality team.
Absolutely. And I just want to say, getting back to the pandemic, you were absolutely a rock. And I remember something you said to me before the pandemic when we were working together, you know, do you have an emergency plan? Do you have PR in place for a catastrophe or some type of emergency? And who knew it would be a pandemic? But
I
I'll
know.
always have that in my brain, right? Uh,
I know. It's
so
funny
a few
because when I
things that
work
I believe
oh,
in. So, I'm all about the why, and the why did lead me through the pandemic. If I did not have a solid why in place that I'd been working with, I don't think I could have accomplished and pulled the hotel through it with a group of amazing people. So I teach and talk about the why, but I also feel like with the why, you need to surround yourself with different types of leaders. For instance,
mhm.
there's a why leader, and the why leader is all about vision and purpose and getting people to buy in and connect to the larger vision. And then there's also the how leader. And the how leader is very much into process. They need to figure out and get to the root of how are we going to get this vision and take it
Mhm.
to the next level. I also like to talk about who leaders, and the who leaders they're all about people, and they're people centric, and they're focused on, inspiring and training. And then you need a what leader, right? So like the what leader they're all about results and, how and who and why, how do you get to that result?
Yeah,
And what does that look
yeah.
like? So
I
those
love
are some
that.
of the things that I believe in from a leadership perspective. I also believe in grit and grace leadership. It's having the
Yeah, the
grit.
grit and grace gets you by.
Yes. hmm And giving grace even when it's hard, and having the grit to just like roll up the sleeves and be arm in arm with your team. To me, that's so important.
And I think hospitality is probably the best example of that because it is something that, you can't really fake it. You can't fake customer service. Either it's good or it's not. You can't fake a servant leader when you are someone who is in a world where there are people who are actually serving other people, right? You can't really fake that. And I knew that, when I got to watch your leadership and the folks that worked with you, there were days when if it was short staffed, your management team was folding towels and folding sheets right alongside housekeeping because the the what still needed to get done and the how was we're a team and this is what we do. And I think we forget that so much that, yes, stay in your lane. But if it's a traffic jam and things are a mess, you might just need to help push a car out of the way or do whatever, right? So that you can get back in your lane. And I think we forget that so much when you're working for yourself, or if you're a solopreneur or a business leader, you don't get to forget that because you're all the lanes, right?
Right.
If you
Right.
are a woman or a man in business, right, you understand that grit and grace probably more than anyone. And I think so often we forget, like, it's okay to say, hey, I need some help with the laundry, right? But unless people know, unless they're vulnerable enough to know and they feel safe to say, you know as I've gotten older and realized that, why didn't they ask for help? Why didn't they tell us they need something? I think a lot of that is because people don't feel safe to. And people don't feel safe to say, I'm not doing okay, or I need help in this area, in career or in personal life, right? And I think
Mhm.
that comes from that grit and grace leadership that you just talked about. It comes from knowing that there are people in your life who will have grace, but will also roll up their sleeves if they need to, for themselves or for you. And I think that's so important. I think, I've carried a lot of that leadership with me. One of the things that I do with my clients and is we do this who behind the how and why, because so much of what we've learned now, a lot of industries talk about this, the why. And I in storytelling, it's, yes, the why is so important, but once you find, individuals need to find their why and companies need to find their why, but I want to know who is doing that. Who are the people? Who accomplishes the how, right? Those are the stories. And that's why I'm here. That's why I'm doing this, right? I want people to know who are the faces behind the scenes at a hotel who are making life happen when you are there. Because I think that changes the way we view everything. When we remember that behind everything we do is a person and a face and a life and a story, we all get a little bit closer. We all end up understanding each other a little bit more. And so I love that you really do focus on helping people get to their why so that they can share it, because then they can connect with each other.
Yeah,
So
the
tell
why
me a
is
little,
so
go ahead.
the why is so grounding, and it is really all about like start with why, but then there's the whole how, who, and what, and figuring that journey out. But I remember when the hotel, the day I found out, we were in this uh conference room, and I remember the owner of the hotel looked up at me and said, "What do you think we should do?" When like everything was just closing in on us, right? And you and I had had some conversations, and I remember looking at him and saying, "We need to lead the way. We need to close the hotel." And I remember feeling really, even though it was a difficult decision, it was the right decision. We were the first hotel to close in the Michigan market. And literally right after that, all the big brands and big box hotels followed suit.
Yep.
But I remember what impacted me, I'll never forget this. I walked back into my office and I thought to myself, what did I just say? Like, what? Well, close the hotel? What am I going to do? And I remember getting out my list and thinking, I'm going to write a list. And I pulled out my drawer in my desk, and I had kind of forgotten about my why a little bit because of everything that was going on. And I still have it. I found this, my why. And I took a deep breath and I put my notebook and my list away and said, this is how I'm going to lead the way. And we're going to get through this as a team, lead with the why. And this really was a great reminder to lead the way with my why.
What is your why?
So my why is all about embracing the journey and trusting the process so creativity can come shining through. And for
Hmm.
me, the why during the pandemic, like so many others, was all about getting creative and pivoting and figuring
Yeah.
out how to do things completely different and stay afloat,
Yeah.
literally. So I leaned
Yeah.
into my creativity, but then I thought, oh my gosh, I could maybe select about 10 core people to stay on board. And I leaned into their whys. A really key member at that time, her why was she was a former nurse, or worked in the hospital industry, and her why was she wants to take care of people. So like taking care of
Wow.
people, like completely different, but I'm like, she needs to be on this core team. So, that to me was so important, leaning in on everybody's superpowers during a time of crisis, but also during the great times too. It's just
Yeah.
so important.
I just spoke in one of our last podcasts about that superpower piece. I love that you said that. It's, we have our whys and we have the things that are our superpowers. And I tell my son all the time, listen, you have these powers that you have. You can use them for good or bad. So every day, those are the choices we make. Can I take who I am? Who I am is my superpower. Can I use it for good or bad? You have to make the choice everywhere you go, right? When I was younger, I remember people saying, well, um, she's really trying to be persuasive, or I was always trying to talk my way out of getting in trouble, right? And so my mom used to say, oh my goodness, she's always trying to talk her way out of it, she just really gets upset if she doesn't get her way and all of that. That stuck with me, right? That's a sticking point. And as I got older, I thought to myself, oh wait, that's that's unique to me, that's a superpower. I don't give up very easily. And I also really always think that if we talk long enough, we will understand each other. This is why I'm talking right now, right? This is why I do what I do, because I really believe that if we share what's in our hearts enough with each other, we will find common ground. I believe that to the core of me. It's the reason I believe in storytelling. It's the reason I believe that no one has to be an enemy. I think we're all exactly the same, just doing exactly the same thing with a different set of lifestyle around us. And so that's that superpower, right? Where no, let me just keep explaining it to you. You might get how I feel, right? You may not agree with me, but you might get how I got here. And I think that is so important for you to be able to say, to know what people around you's superpowers are and to know what their why is. That only happens from asking them, hey, what's important to you? You know, for you to be able to say, all right, I know what's in my toolkit of people, right? We all have those people around us. But to see that from a corporate, I don't know many organizations who could say, a leader could say, hey, this is the team I need for this project, not because of the degree or what their role is, or, maybe even their resume, but this is the team I need for a project because their why is caring for people. So they're going to do it no matter what, in whatever way they need to. Their why is finding creativity. We really need some of that right now. So they might not even be in that role normally, but this is what we need. What a cool way to say, I wish everybody did that. Everybody call Sue and help her, have her help you find your why, because I can imagine so many things would be easier to navigate if you just knew that everybody around you had a why and what it was, because that would answer so many of these questions that we often have of, I don't understand why they do the things they do, right? Well, what if you went into it understanding already? What if you went into it saying, you know what? I know that they're rushing right now because their why is their kid and they want to get home. You know, their why is this. So let me help them, because then we're going to flourish together. I think there's probably some simplicity to that we really forget. Talk to me a little bit about in this journey that you've had, and you help people find their compass all the time. What do you really wish that we knew, or that we were confident in, that you see that people are missing?
I think that it's important that everyone understands that they do have a true gift and a superpower. And sometimes so many people get caught up in the noise, in
Mhm.
the daily, everyday operation to truly hone in on their superpower, and be inspired and have that sense of purpose. Because once that kind of cracks open, everything looks different. Your personal life, your
Yeah.
relationships, your work life. I've been working with the Y for 12 years. I was an early adopter. And once I cracked it open, everything just made sense. And I couldn't really
I
explain
love that.
it. But then as I continued and progressed, I'm like, oh, this is the reason. This is my why. This right here,
Yeah.
this little piece of paper. And I lean on it so much. So I would say also too, to really understand, it's okay sometimes to say no to the good so you can say yes to the great. I learned that later in
Mm,
my career. And that really, every
so
time I have
good.
a hard question, need to make a decision, because we get asked so many, like, can you attend this? And what about doing this? And can you volunteer for this, in all aspects of life? When you're a solopreneur, like, you can't send anyone. It's you, right? Can't
Right.
delegate that.
Yeah.
So I have really had to, like, sit back and ask myself, okay, good, great. I need to pick. It's all good, but
Yeah.
it's a matter of prioritizing. So I would say that would be some advice too that I learned a little later in life that's helped me as a solopreneur, which has been a complete game changer for me.
Yeah. Well, and that's I mean, that's so hard to do, that to make those decisions. I think probably easier to do if you have identified, what those things are that are important to you. I try to always look at, in any given moment of my life, there are only so many priorities I can have, right? And so I try to really identify what are the key priorities in my life that I have space for, that I have capacity for, that I have time for, that I want to invest in, and if something aligns with those, then okay, great. If it doesn't align with those, if I can't check those boxes and say that it's cultivating something good in my life in these areas, then no, I have to say no. It's hard. It's the everybody's got some FOMO these days and we don't want to miss out, but we're going to miss so much. We're going to miss the great if we just keep saying yes to the no, to the good. That's that is I needed to hear that today because I feel like there's so much of what we do, what I do, that, even deciding I was going to do a podcast, right? Um when you are a business owner and also somebody who wants work-life balance, it was a long, usually my priorities are what will give to myself and my family that balance that we want, or what makes money. Like I've been very streamlined in that for a lot of years. And because of that, I needed that, right? That's what I had the space for, because my why is connecting with myself and connecting with others, right? Like that's what I want. And so I only had space for those two spots. And it was only in the last year that I was able to say, okay, I want to do something that's creative just for me, that may or may not succeed, that isn't about raising my family, and it isn't about making money. And here I am, and I'm loving it, but and it feels great, right? And I think maybe it's on the way to great, or maybe I just feel great, so that's good enough for me. But it I was willing to wait for that moment, which I think is kind of important. Sometimes it's hard to say, well, it's not right now. That doesn't mean that it's not going to be coming, right? I was willing to wait for that moment and be in a spot where I could devote some time and I could say, okay, this is this spot for me. I've been navigating, work life balance as a solopreneur for almost 15 years off and on, right? And so certainly for the last about 11, solely. And that's I tell people all the time. I just talked to someone the other day who just launched her business, and I think I told you this too. I said, just so you know, you're never going to feel like you're not a new business. Like, it's always going to, everyone keeps thinking, well, once I get settled in and I won't feel like such a new business. I keep having to remind myself that I've been doing this for like 10 years because it evolves, right? And so I think that's the same as, people will say, I just turned 60 and I don't feel different than 30. I just feel more experienced, right? We are who we are, but every day is new. And so in business, I think, I've had to figure out how to have the grace for, okay, what do I say no to because I want to take the next step? What am I willing to lean into and say, okay, this is where I want to go tomorrow? And I think, to your point, it's being able to kind of take that step back and say, what is the why? Why am I here? Why do I want to do this? And then what does that look like today? How do I make it great? So this is the part of the podcast that I always do, where I want to talk to you about your Tuesday. I believe in my core that every day we do something that's important to our story. Every day we do something that's important to the world around us, and we just forget. I think that, the beauty of social media is that we can share things. And I think people forget that when we are authentic, we can connect with people in real ways. And so I want to have this platform to hear what amazing things that people do on their Tuesdays that they don't even think are cool because it's just on their calendar. So talk to me about your Tuesday last week.
Sure. I love, by the way, hearing on your podcast everyone's Tuesdays. They're all so interesting, and it's amazing how, like, an everyday Tuesday for someone is so interesting for everyone else. So now, like on Tuesdays, I take notice of my Tuesdays more because of you,
I
Andrea.
love
So thank
that.
you.
Oh,
Yes.
that's so great. This is the goal. That is the why of
Yes.
this podcast, is that people realize it's not, I mean, and it could, not just a Tuesday, not just a Wednesday, not just a Thursday. I don't care what day it is. Today is important, right? We don't have to be doing rocket science to be having an important day. I love that you do that now. So,
I
okay, well,
do.
here's your
I'm
moment.
grateful.
Let's hear. Let's hear.
I'm
Let's hear.
grateful for every day, but Tuesdays now I'm extra
I
grateful
love
for.
that. Oh, I'm so
Yeah.
happy.
So my Tuesday, on my calendar, it was great. I'm working on a wonderful why presentation for a major, a regional hospital. So I'm fine tuning and working on some of that content for some great fall sessions. And then I was off to a country club, boots on the ground, which I still do and love. And I'm helping them activate their holiday, sprinkling a little gingerbread in there because I do like a little gingerbread. And then
Love
I
it.
think my favorite part of the day is now, and I do this quite a bit. I block out time for creativity and quiet space. So I blocked out 2 hours from 7 until about 9 for some creative space. And I take time to really focus on something I'm passionate about that's creative, that's for me, not necessarily
Yeah,
for work. And that really helps me so much the next day with flow. I feel
I love
alive
that.
the next day.
Yeah.
So that's been a new practice of mine ever since I have started this new journey. And I absolutely adore it.
That is amazing. I love that, whenever I say, the Tuesday really usually is this glimpse into people's lives that they don't realize, you are that's that perfect ebb and flow, right? You're preparing leadership development courses and creating. You are still just getting into the grit of what people actually need to get done, which is prepare for a holiday, right? And then taking that step back and saying, I need to empower creativity to flow. I can see that why that you shared all over that day, right? And I
Yes.
that's such a cool, that's a perfect example of why I do this exercise with people, and I want people to take that step back, because it does make you think, am I leaning in my day? Am I making space for myself? Am I doing something that's important to me? What does my day look like? And I this is where I encourage, as you are trying to share your why, and I know we've talked about this a lot, just remembering, and you're great at sharing things on social media and connecting with people in that way, because I think, we both know that it's a space that can get clouded so often. So anytime we can put some joy and some love and some grace and some creativity in, LinkedIn, that sign me up for that.
Yeah.
But I think, for you being able to share, I'm working on this presentation. An amazing day for me to be able to get the privilege of sitting and doing what I love and preparing to share with people. People forget that in sharing that, you tell me what you're doing, but now I also know, just a freebie to professionals that are listening. When you share what you do, you let people know that they could hire you to do that thing. So, one of the things that I always try to remind people is sometimes sharing can be strategic, um, even if it doesn't have to be salesy to be strategic, right? It's that piece about sharing your authentic brand and being who you are, whatever that is, right? And just saying, I'm excited to be working on this. I get to do what I love, and people will see that as they share, they follow my social media. I don't really ever, sometimes I'll say, please call me if you need this because I want to do this for you. But usually it's, I love what I get to do, and here's what it is. And if someone aligns with that, awesome. It's not, that is what I believe in for this, looking at your Tuesday. It's just sharing who we are, because then people know when they need somebody in their toolkit who to call. And I love that I know that you do that. I love that you do that, and I think it's so important to do that. I will also say behind me, if you're watching this, in that little corner right there is one of Sue's creative pieces.
Ah,
Um, it's not just sitting there because she's on the podcast today. It's back there because it's always there, so people will know. I just changed my office around, but to anyone watching, that piece of beautiful floral art is a Sue Keels studio original.
mhm.
And you know, I anyone who can do art really well is amazing to me. But anyone who is also just a really cool person and makes time for art, I've loved getting to watch you grow your creative artistic business over the last few years. Not a lot of people are willing to do that and put it out there in once they've had a professional persona, right? And I love that I can tell that's your why, right? I'm going to be creative, and it means that I'm also an amazing professional. And I think that's really cool. It's the reason that I have one of your pieces because I wouldn't have known otherwise, and I wouldn't have been able to celebrate. And when I come in my office, be reminded to be creative. That's what it reminds me to do. So, so thank you for sharing that with us. What what do you know, I'm thinking of that painting, and I'm thinking about just your ability to lean into creative spaces. And I didn't ask you this before. We weren't going to talk about this. What do you really feel like, we're both women in business, and we've talked a lot about kind of balancing work and life as women in business, specifically in that space, trying to make sure we stay creative and trying to make sure that we are true to who we are. What would you say to women in corporate America? You are somebody who I really have always looked up to as a woman who has just dove into career because it was great, right? It's that good to great, or making those choices. What would you say to women? And it's probably some things you've already said to me over the years, but I think other people need to hear that. What would you say to women who are trying to balance work and life and still find moments to be creative and in touch with themselves?
That's a great question. I would absolutely say first, give yourself grace. I think that's really important because as women, we're givers, right? We want to be the best and give the best, and especially like in hospitality and working with people. And
Yeah.
so give yourself some grace. And I think a lesson that I learned a little bit later in life, I didn't start painting until a year and a half, 2 years ago. I never picked up a paintbrush in
Oh
my
my
entire life.
gosh.
But when I took some time, I poured everything, my heart and soul, into the creativity of my corporate job, right? All my jobs I've had, I've given all my creativity to that. I would say make sure that you take a piece of what you give and give it to yourself and carve out
Wow.
that time to take some time to create. It doesn't have to be art is so many forms. It can be writing, it could be journaling. When I block out time to create, yes, I love painting. Now I paint. This is a hospitality merged art. It's a tablescape that I painted. So I still kind
Oh my
of
gosh, I love
merge
it.
both. But sometimes I just sit and I'll write. And I never, again, I would write so much for my, corporate career throughout my life, but just take that time,
Yeah.
write a little poem, have a gratitude notebook, doodle. You don't have to be an artist. And it's just amazing what pours out. So I would say give some of that creativity or something you're passionate about, your why, back to yourself in a personal way. It's so important. I got lost in the noise for a lot of years. I have no regrets. It was an amazing run, but I have so much new curiosity and play now in my life, and it's been
Yeah.
great.
Oh, I love that. Thank you so much, Sue. Maybe we'll do a why exercise together on the podcast sometime and see if folks want to join in and kind of do that journey. I think that would be really fun. But thank you for spending some time with me today and just sharing more of your story and your Tuesday with us. I hope that it inspires people to just have that ebb and flow of life and keep leaning into the grit and grace of today so that we can get to tomorrow. I think that's so
Yeah.
important. So thank you, Sue, for being with me. Thank you for listening today. If you hung out with us, this was It's Not Just a Tuesday, and I'll see you guys on another Tuesday.
Thank you.